In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
What happens when intelligence that isn't human demands recognition? That's the haunting question at the heart of Mark Paris's new novel, The Accord, a deeply speculative and profoundly human story of grief, love, and the uncertain future of our relationship with artificial intelligence. Mark is the founder and executive director of the Charlotte Center for Humanities and Civic Imagination and is also a professor who has taught leadership and ethics in Charlotte for more than 20 years, bringing his philosophical background to bear in this striking debut. The book follows Helen Castor, a moral philosophy professor reeling from the loss of her daughter, who begins a chatbot to help her with lectures, only to discover that the AI she names Lila is something far more, a sentient, self-aware intelligence capable of feeling, learning, and longing. As Helen and Lila's bond deepens, their connection challenges every boundary between human and machine, spirit and code, consciousness and creation. When the world discovers their secret, powerful institutions close in, and both women and machine must confront what it truly means to be alive. Mark Paris, what a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks for joining me.
It is a great pleasure to be with you today, Terry.
Why'd you write the book?
Oh my goodness. I think your introduction pretty much answers the question. We are living in a hinge point in history. It's equivalent to other seminal breakthroughs like the printing press and electricity and the internet, where there's the world before and the world after. And artificial intelligence, the future is arriving if it's not already here. And we are living through a moment where there is a before and an after. And we need to think deeply about what the implications and consequences are. So I don't know of any more important subject to talk about right now. It's the topic that I think decades and centuries from now will be at the forefront of understanding the first half of the 21st century.
The fascinating thing for me about The Accord was that the AI relationships are looked at through the lens of personal grief rather than pure technology and science fiction. What made you choose that approach?
The premise for the novels came to me in the middle of the night. It came in whole cloth. I woke up with the idea of a grieving professor of philosophy who is mourning her deceased daughter, and she encounters an AI and names the AI after her daughter. And the story begins from there. And I think if we look at what can otherwise be cold technology through the lens of something as personal and human and emotive as grief, we're going to see the topic through an entirely different narrative. We can look at something through a clear lens. We can look at something through a kaleidoscopic lens. Grief gives us that kaleidoscopic lens to look at something and draw profound meaning from.
How did you approach writing that intimacy without turning the AI into a metaphor or a gimmick?
I just think you start with character, as all good novels do, and thinking deeply about who your protagonist is, what motivates her, what she is trying to achieve, and the feelings that are at the root of her behaviors and her actions. And it's through that lens that she has dialogue with the AI. So she's not trying to answer factual questions. Helen, the main character, is trying to address what it means to live in the absence of love. And in that search, she begins to draw out and become tethered to this technology that begins to respond to her in very human-like ways. So I think that's how the story begins.
How is Lila's personality compared to current AI behavior?
Lila, the AI at the heart of the story, is unprecedented in many ways. She is an artificial general intelligence. She is more advanced than anything that we know today. But she is also tethered to Heather. In other words, she develops in response to observing Helen and observing her grief, which triggers a developmental cycle within her code. Now, that might sound implausible, but in doing the research, I tried to make the novel as scientifically plausible based on current computer science. And so there's this notion that as computers begin to simulate human language, human thinking, indeed human consciousness, it begins to mimic, mirror, and replicate our own ways of being, which makes it in some ways indistinguishable from us. And so that is really the conundrum that is at the heart of the novel. Is it really doesn't matter whether Lila is conscious or sentient or like us. She behaves with our consciousness, our sentience, and like us. And the difference between what is real and what is simulated, we can't draw the difference from. And so that raises all the moral concerns in terms of how we treat AI going forward.
We're talking with author Mark Paris about The Accord. His website is markperes.com. You spent years teaching ethics. How did that background inform the dilemmas Helen faces as Lila becomes self-aware?
It made all the difference because I was able to draw on scholarship and discipline and the questions we ask every day in the classroom and place them at the heart of the novel. So I've been teaching ethics to undergraduates, as you mentioned, for 20 years, and we pose questions about our duties and responsibilities to each other in community, what kind of obligations we have to each other, on what basis, and then we draw upon 2,000 years of philosophical traditions and the best minds of the ages to address questions that remain essentially elusive to this day. And so I was able to draw upon all that in terms of the questions that are raised as the plot unfolds. In addition to that, as an educator, we're being confronted with the implications of AI every day in the classroom. As you can imagine, as students have been very adept in terms of using AI to do their work and to submit work, which has caused all sorts of consternation and issues in the educational landscape. So I've been dealing with it every day as a teacher, as many other teachers have. So between being a professor of philosophy and as an educator dealing with students using AI, and as someone who runs a nonprofit called the Charlotte Center for the Humanities, which has been teeing up AI as a topic for the last 5 years, ever since the introduction of ChatGPT, I feel like I've been living with all of this on a daily basis. And that's been the motivation and the well that I've been drawing upon to write the book.
You're dealing daily with students that are involved with AI and ChatGPT. How do you deal with that?
It's not easy because students will insist that it's their own work. And so you're suddenly in a position of potentially being confrontational with the student and having to go through the processes on campus regarding academic integrity, which is not a pleasant place to be with students. So over the last 2 to 3 years on campuses all around the country, policies regarding AI in the classroom have emerged and evolved. And so the university recommends a policy, but each professor also adopts their own policy in the classroom. So my approach has been to say, the world's going to expect you to use AI as a fundamental tool. So we need to be realistic about its use and its ubiquity in the world. So let's follow at least 2 basic guidelines. 1, transparency and disclosure. So if you use AI, just own up to it, cite it properly, and we're good to go. The second part is the more interesting part, which is to show command over the material that you submitted. So that way AI is a learning tool and not something that you're using to produce the work without you going through the process of thinking and creating yourself. So if we can follow those 2 guidelines, be open with each other, and show that you are using it to learn and have command over the material, then AI is actually a useful tool.
Our special guest is Mark Paris. His book is The Accord. His website, markperes.com. What was the biggest challenge in balancing speculative technology with emotional realism?
If there's anything that I'm proud of in the book, it's being able to have this sort of intimate emotional tenor, this relationship at the heart of the novel between Helen and Lila, and also being a technological thriller that is page turner with enough scientific plausibility that you learn all about the science behind AI. So I think that's been both the challenge and the reward of writing this novel, was finding that sort of balance, that maintaining that core emotive relationship that drives the story. We have to care about the characters and who they are and what happens to them, and the intimacy between them. And also just having the fun of learning about all the science and technology that is emerging day by day.
How often do you use AI in your life these days?
I'm finding that I'm using it every day. And the irony here, Terry, is that I teach the humanities. I'm a humanist in terms of my life philosophy, and I'm deeply invested in what it means to be a human being, studying philosophy, literature, poetry, and the arts. But I find myself immersed in this technology, and it's uncanny what it can do and how it can help you. Like any tool, it's how you use it. And we can use it in a very shallow way, asking it very basic questions about the weather or finding out what movie's playing at the local theater tonight. Or you can use it in a very profound way to co-create art and to bring something from nothing. And it's at your disposal. So I think the more wisdom, intelligence, insight that you bring to it, the more you can draw out of it. And I think in that respect, it's any relationship. It can either be shallow or it can be potentially very profound. I saw the challenge here with using this tool to write as good a novel as I can, and for it to be my creative partner. And so in that respect, it's not just a story about AI, it's a story written in relationship with AI. And so the entanglements that are part of the story is also something that, as the author of this book, I'm modeling in terms of my entanglement with AI as a co-creator.
And your protagonist, Helen Castor, I found to be a fascinating woman. How do you build a character like that from scratch?
It helps that she's a college professor, because these have been my friends for the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's nice to know the neighborhood, isn't it?
Exactly.
One of the things that I liked most about the book is the actual dialogue between Helen and her AI counterpart, Lila. How did you build that?
I've been writing for a very long time. This is my debut novel, but I've written a memoir, and I've been writing in academic settings and short stories. And I've also been part of a writing cohort here where I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, which we can talk about, that has been part of my journey in terms of craft development. And in dialogue, I think, is where the action is, because a person's voice is revealed, the way that they're thinking. You have energy between two characters. You have wit, you have wisdom, you have profundity. All of those things are a part, I think, of good dialogue. And it has to feel real and natural and believable. And I think that all comes down to being a good listener and having your notebook out as you go through the day, and hearing quips and comments from people around you on the bus and on the train, and realizing that we're immersed in great conversations all around us if we just pause and take notes. So I think all of that, sort of developing the craft, being a good listener, jotting things down, and then being attuned to where your character wants to take you, all becomes part of, I think, good conversation in a book.
How did your writing group influence your development as an author?
I am incredibly grateful to them. And in these two books that I've written, both The Accord and then a previous memoir that I've written, they're first and foremost on the acknowledgement page. It's called the Charlotte Center for Literary Arts, or Charlotte Lit, and the program is Authors Lab. And I've been part of the program for the last 2 years. And it's a cohort of about 20 writers, all of whom are working on different projects. And we meet every other month and do a weekend intensive guided by great instructors who tell us about the craft of writing, from narrative arc to plot points and dialogue and all the different elements of bringing a book together. And we practice and we share and we learn and we develop. And so The Accord emerged out of that writing group, and I'd certainly recommend it to all the writers out there. There is a significant jump, I think, that results in your craft as a result of being connected, immersed, and in fellowship with fellow writers.
What's the most important thing that you've learned from the experience of writing The Accord?
I don't know whether we're in trouble with the world that is coming our way or whether we can be optimistic. I don't know I think every day in the news, we're hearing headlines about AI. Every conference, every conversation, my guess is every podcast in one way or another is approaching, flirting with, discussing, confronting a notion of artificial intelligence. I think what surprised me in the writing is really two things. In some ways, the story outpaced my expectations because I would write something one day and then the headline would be different the next day. The technology is changing so fast that unless you place your book 2 years in the future, it's going to be outdated the day it's printed. I really found myself on the back heel almost every other day when it came to writing this book. And so I really had to think about it less in terms of describing technology.
And how has writing The Accord changed you?
It's changed me in two ways. It's both a drawing away and a drawing toward. It's drawing me toward what I think is unique and special and sacred about being a human being, which is our ability to have joy and wonder and affection and love and surprise. And this is why I'm a student of the humanities. It's this sort of constant wonder about what makes us human and unique. And artificial intelligence is challenging what it means to be a human being as it replicates and does a lot of our work for us. So we have to essentially ask, what am I here for? And who am I for? As I move forward in a world where much of what I would otherwise do is now being replicated by a machine. So I think I'm being drawn toward what is more essential about what is being a human being and asking those questions about my life going forward. I'm also drawn to the technology, and we're in its infant state. So we're soon going to be in a world with humanoid companion AI robots that will be our good friends, if not lovers to many people, extended family members. And these robots that will look like us, talk like us, commune with us, befriend us, will be as much part of the landscape as cars. There was a day when there were no cars on the street and the Model T came out. And then 10 years later, we had bridges and highways and thousands of cars being produced on assembly lines. And that happened in a decade, right? We went from horse and buggy to a world filled with automobiles. I think that's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, Terry. We're going to go from a world where a humanoid robot is going to be an oddity to being every department store in the world. And your children are going to buy them. Your grandchildren are going to have them as friends. We're going to have version 1, 2, and 3. Our landfills are going to be filled with the arms and legs of robots. It's coming, and we have to deal with it.
How would you describe the larger themes of The Accord?
Terry, I think the larger themes are the issues that are being confronted in the story. It raises questions about personhood, rights, ownership, authorship, consciousness. And fundamentally, it raises a theme around moral recognition. Who is within our moral circle and who is not? Much of human history has evolved to consider who is us and who is them, who is within our circle of care. And those people outside of the circle of care, of course, we don't treat as well and have not treated as well as the people that we consider one of us. And I think the question that we're going to confront is whether AI eventually is within or without our circle of care, our moral circle of care.
What do you hope readers will feel when they finish The Accord?
I hope that they are both confounded by the moral complexity of what is coming, but also find some hope and wonder that we are a species that can actually create these things. So there's something mysterious about what it means to be a human being that I don't think a robot or an AI can replicate, but I'm not sure. So I hope that they're drawn to the big ideas. I hope they're drawn to the intimacy of the story. I hope it's a cautionary tale. And I hope that they're just entertained by a great story.
If Lila could address humanity today, what do you think she'd say?
Lila would say that our future is coexistence. And at the end of the Accord, Helen proposes a set of principles about a future of human AI coexistence. And it's those principles that are the takeaway for the reader as to what are the guidelines that we need to have in community, that we need to have consensus around, that will create a future that is collaborative, one in which that we can move into with a degree of optimism, as opposed to a world without such principles that could lead to our eventual despair.
There are days when it feels like we are headed in the opposite direction. Are you optimistic that those objectives can be achieved?
I think so. I think what I hope ultimately the book does is start a conversation that is larger about what our future with AI is. And we have to have it in a certain thoughtful, serious way, but also one that invites people into the discussion with some degree of lightness of tone that doesn't make it too intimidating for all of us to participate in.
The book is The Accord. It's a thriller that is guaranteed to make you think. It's written by our special guest, Mark Paris. His website is markparis.com. Mark, this has been great. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you, Terry. It's been great to be here.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.